Welcome back to Online Darts, everyone. We're in central London. First of all, Matt, thank you very much, because I have pestered you since last week for this.
No problem, Phil.
It's been a busy week and plenty of announcements for everyone to get their teeth into, but let's jump straight into it. The first one that everyone is talking about is the World Championship announcement, the fact that non-tour card holders now have to choose which one that they play in. First of all, how did this all come about, and when was this decision made, and was it a tough one?
Well, obviously, the WDF have made the decision to move their World Championship prior to Alexandra Palace, which has obviously changed the dynamic of things, because clearly it's the second event that always has to make the decision. So we've never been the second event before. We are now, and I mean second in terms of chronology. I wouldn't say in terms of anything else, if I'm being brutally honest, but we're the second event in the calendar. So there has to be a point where you have to make a decision that's in the best interest of the organisation. Everything we've tried to build up over the last 30 years, the fact that no sport benefits from having more than one world champion, the fact that we strongly believe in integration between the men's game and the women's game at the elite level. And ultimately, we've made a decision that's in the best interest of the PDC. I don't think there's going to be any player who would disagree with that. They may think it's not a decision that's in the best interests of them as an individual, depending on their circumstances, but we have to protect the investment and the effort that we've put into building up the PDC World Championship to being the World Championship in darts and one of the leading sporting events in the world. Some
of the bits obviously we've seen on social media, the tour card holders, I think everyone completely understands, but the non-tour card holders, people can't get their head around, and people are saying it's a restraint of trade because they haven't signed anything. Is that something that was possibly you worried about?
No, I don't think so. We're not. A restraint of trade is when you stop somebody going out there and earning a living. We're just saying to you, you've got to choose which World Championship you play in. And players will make their own decisions based on their own circumstances and what decision's right for them at this point in their career. Some may choose to play at the Lakeside, some may choose to play at Alexandra Palace. But ultimately, you can't have your cake and eat it. It's one or the other.
On that, obviously, as soon as they moved it, was this something that you were thinking about, or was it only when you realised that people had or were qualifying for both it became an issue?
Yeah, look, obviously when it was announced that the Lakeside was going to be played in December, then it became a potential issue. And then when it became apparent that there were going to be players who were going to qualify for both, and we're not talking about many people here, by the way, we're not talking about a busload of players, then there had to be a decision that was made.
Obviously, Luke Littler is one that jumps out, and he's already nailed his colours to the mast. He's going to play at Alexandra Palace. So, from that point of view, arguably the most exciting youngster on the planet has come over. So, you must be pleased about that.
Yeah, we are. But ultimately, if Luke had chosen to play in the Lakeside, then we'd respect that. The World Darts Championship doesn't live and die by one player. Particularly somebody who's yet to prove themselves. And Luke, as you say, is a very exciting talent, and he's on a great career trajectory. And let's hope that he carries on that way. But if he'd have chosen to play in the Lakeside because that was the right decision for him, we'd have fully respected that, and there would be no intention from our side to sanction any player who decided to play in the Lakeside. There won't be any exclusions from future events, or we wouldn't hold it against them. They have to make the decision that's right for them.
On Bow and the women's game in particular, how much of a kick in the teeth almost would this be for the PDC that someone that's dominated the women's series and won the women's match play to then go and play in the other one, because she has been so dominant on the women's series? She has been,
although it was more evenly spread at the last weekend. But I take your point completely. I think it would be I would understand the decision. It wouldn't be the decision I would make if I was her. But that's not to say it's the wrong decision for her at the point she is in her career if she chooses to play at the Lakeside. Again, it won't make a material difference to the tournament. I don't know, it's a difficult one. As I say, everyone's got to do what they've got to do. We're investing a lot of money into women's darts. The women's series, the prize money's significant, the women's match play, the qualification spots for the Grand Slam and the World Championship, and the support from the women's game has been tremendous for that. Entry levels are now averaging over 100 per tournament. The ticket sales for the Women's World Match Play increased this year. People are talking about who's going to be in the Grand Slam, who's going to be in the World Championship. There has to become a time where you have to put something back into the sport as well. We're we're giving a lot of platforms now for ambitious women players to go on and have a career as a professional dart player, not just play as a hobby at the weekends. So if you want that to continue as a woman player, you have to support that. So whilst I would say yes, make the decision that's right for you at the time, sometimes it doesn't hurt to take a bigger picture approach.
If the WDF had left their World Championship in either January or April, as it was last year, would this decision been different?
There wouldn't have been a decision for us to make. If our event was... Don't forget the Tomlin order in the late 90s prohibits players from playing in 2 World Championships in the same season. It specifically prohibits that. A legal order specifically states players cannot play in both codes World Championships in the same season. So all we're doing is following the rules of or the jurisdiction of that Tomlin order. But of course the decision is now ours rather than the BDOs or the WDFs, because our tournament is second, not first.
Was that from when the split happened originally? Because obviously younger darts fans won't fully appreciate
it's a good point that people may not be aware of that. When I first started in this sport 20 years ago, people still talked about the Tomlin order quite regularly. Maybe now it's not spoken about or known about by younger darts fans or newer darts fans. So why don't I share that wording with you, and you can publish it and see what people say about it, but it's explicit.
It's an interesting point, because like we say, the younger generation, obviously some don't even know about the split back in the day.
PDC BDO split, so no, exactly.
On this, is there any way to get the amateur game and the professional game actually linked as one, working in tandem, or do you think the organisations are just too far apart for that to happen?
No, I don't think we're that far apart. I think there has to be an explicit understanding that we are the professional game and everything outside of the PDC system is the amateur game. And that can come through tournament naming, that can come through the way you advertise yourself, that can come through how you get your messaging across to players. But we can't have a position again. I mean, the BDO World Championship, when it finished, was actually called the BDO World Professional Darts Championship, which I know you had a view on at the time. I remember listening to your opinion on it.
Still do now.
And it's just not good for darts to have that.
Interesting. It's nice to hear this, because obviously it was the WDF that announced it, so people wanted the PDCs.
Yeah, and by the way, they had to make a decision that they felt was right for their event. They need to sell tickets, they need to get a broadcast partner, they need to get a sponsor. So by moving the event to early December, they obviously feel their event is more commercially viable than it was in January.
On the WDF announcement and the wording of it, and going back to you said about the order in place, were you surprised then that they were openly saying that, as far as we're concerned, players can play in both? They had no issue with it, and they were happy for them to play in both.
Yeah, I wasn't. I mean, I don't specifically remember that phrasing. I spoke to Nick Rolls beforehand, and Nick and I get on very well. We talk regularly about a number of issues. I don't remember that specifically. And it may have been that they said that before we communicated. We communicated our decision to them before it was made public.
Yeah.
So they knew. So that may have come from
it was before, I think, that Nick said he had meetings planned with you.
Right,
that was said. So I'm guessing that maybe Nick wasn't even aware of it.
We were supposed to meet on the day of the air traffic control problems, and I was stuck overseas. So we ended up communicating via email.
Yeah, no, that's great. On that, the calendar. Interesting. Some key topics. Obviously, the first one, Pro Tours all being moved to midweek.
Yeah.
Is that a decision taken to try and streamline it and make the tour more professional?
Yeah, I think that it's something we've been moving towards for the last few years, and something we've not made any secret about. We feel that it's advantageous to players in respect of giving them more opportunities at weekends to either go and do something else or spend time with their family or have time off. Generally, if you're a professional dart player, you're probably not doing a huge amount during the week because the tournaments are at weekends, so it will probably make your personal calendar a little bit easier. I'm sure some people are watching this thinking, no, it won't for me or whatever, but you can't have 128 different opinions. You have to have a view on it. It will give us the opportunity in time to fill other weekends with more tournaments. If we decide to expand the European Tour or the World Series or bring in another TV event or anything like that, it will give us the opportunity to do that, whereas previously with Players' Championship events taking up weekends, we couldn't go head to head with those with TV events because we don't want to ask players to pick and choose which event. We're not quite at that stage yet, like tennis is, where if you want to play in this city or that city, we're not really at that level yet. We may be one day. It won't suit everybody. If you've got another job outside darts, you'll have to plan a bit differently. But ultimately, again, we're trying to build a professional sport, and we can't build that around part-time players.
On that, and it's a good point, and probably I was looking at it, and I was going through knowledge. My calculations, I think somewhere between 60 and 65% of the tour still work in some capacity, and
we think it's a bit less than that.
That's what I was just.
I think it's about half are exclusively dart professional.
Yeah, that's what I was just doing it on my record.
Okay.
I knew I was going to be out somewhere, but looking at it, that if you do every Pro Tour, every qualifier, your travel day, and qualify for half the Euro Tours, you're looking around 75 to 80 days off you're going to have to take from your job. Now,
days off or work different days.
Yeah, I get that.
We've not added more days in, we've just changed the days.
But what I'm saying is that some people may not physically be able to get that time off. Does that then cause an issue for the tour, that if you can't fill those gaps, or if there's huge members of the 128 missing for these Pro Tours?
I don't think it will get to that stage. I think that it will affect a small number. I think a lot of players are ambitious, a lot of players are determined enough, a lot of players have got understanding enough bosses, or if they're self-employed, they can change their own schedules. If it does, it will be a one-year impact, because then the Q School intake from 2025 will understand what the situation is, and it may be that in time some Players' Championships are played on weekends again. It's just, it wasn't an intention to do all 30 this year. It was an intention to do the vast majority. It just so happened that for scheduling, the way that you have to book venues and you have to work out travel between events if there's a tight turnaround. It was just the way it worked out. It's a happy coincidence because it's what we were working towards. But I wouldn't say there'll never be a Players' Championship event again on a Saturday or a Sunday. I just think the direction of travel of our tour is that they will occupy midweek slots going forward. On
turning it into a more professional tour, which by the way I like, but looking at obviously the financials, the lower end of the tour, does that money need to come up though? Because at the moment, so for 128 pros, we can obviously see the money isn't there at the bottom end of the tour to be a full-time pro without working.
Yeah, it's difficult, and we always evaluate prize money, and we're always conscious not just to increase the top prize, because all that's doing is helping one player out, whoever wins that tournament, whereas you put the last 64 money up, you're helping 32 players out, so we're always conscious of that. We review prize funds annually. We do change, you'll notice from our announcements over the last however many years, we do change prize funds quite regularly. We'll be paying the best part of £20 million out in prize money again next year. If you're a tour card holder, I think we worked out you get 47 tournaments to play in. Yeah. You would like to think over 47 attempts over a year, you can earn some money that helps at least cover, if not put you into some sort of profit. That's 94 events over the duration of your 2-year tour card.
On not just obviously the Pro Tour and the players, but within your own staff as well, have you had to take that into consideration? Because things like the markers and things like that are obviously paid, but they have full-time jobs and that as well. Or is that something that is going to be able to
look, we've not suffered from a lack of markers on the midweek events, and we have a never-ending stream of applications for people to mark, and people want to work with us. And it might not, if it doesn't suit everybody to work all 30 days, we won't hold that against them. They can work as it suits them, and we'll fill their places with other people on those days. So I totally understand if people we're grateful to the markers who come up and do the tour events, and the players should be very grateful to them as well, because they provide a valuable service. So it certainly won't be held against them if they have to miss some days because of their own circumstances.
Again, it's something that we constantly talk about, evaluating the tour and making it more professional. Obviously, the tour card situation, Corey not played. Adrian Lewis has taken an extended break. Perez has only played in one event, which was before the World Cup. If we're going to make the tour more professional, are we looking at maybe evaluating how tour cards are used?
And I don't think it's fair to put Adrian in the same bracket as Corey and Christian in that bracket. Adrian's got his own issues, and it's something we've reached out to him to try and support him with, and he's welcome back with open arms, as indeed, Corey's got different circumstances at the moment. Christian, we don't know too much about, but ultimately we are strongly looking at and will change the circumstances to say if you've got a tour card and you don't use it, you will lose it. And we're not talking about if you disappear for a month, because anyone could do that. No. But if you win a tour card in January and we get to the following Christmas and we've seen you once or not at all, then that's going to be something that is going to change going forward, because that's just not fair on everybody else who's trying so hard through Q School or the Challenge Tour or the Dev Tour to win their place.
On Corey, I'm just surmising here. I'm guessing that we're not going to see him because this visa thing is dragged on probably longer than ever before, and the longer it goes, the likelihood is that he's not going to get a visa.
It looks that way, doesn't it? You know, and his manager has tried extremely hard for him. Nothing seems to have really progressed. It's a heck of a waste of talent. He was an entertaining young lad to be around when he was with us. He caused some big upsets. He caused some memorable moments. But you know, being a professional sportsman in any sport, there's more than just talent that has to go into it. You have to have dedication, application, and the right attitude. And if you don't tick all the boxes, you're not going to get anywhere.
Premier League and Masters, we've had a bit of a flip. Now the Masters sits between the opening two.
It's good, isn't it? That's good.
For me, yes, I personally like it. However, does it take something away from the Masters that it's not the curtain raiser?
We spoke earlier in the year about how we don't want the Masters being overshadowed by it being all about who gets the last Premier League place, and it was starting to get that way. And obviously that won't be possible this year because the Masters is after the start of the Premier League. So again, that was an anomaly with the calendar for the Premier League. It had to start on February the 1st. We couldn't do the Masters that early in January because we'll have some World Series action, and there was other reasons with the venue and whatever. But we're comfortable with it. We think it will kind of just bring things back down to earth a little bit on that front. On
the Premier League, obviously we've got the dates and we know where we're going. In terms of format and everything like this, I'm guessing that you'll have looked at the data from this year's format and how are we looking, and do we think there's going to be changes to the format?
No, we're not looking at anything significant this year. The feedback that we had, despite the few keyboard warriors who make their views known, and their opinions are perfectly valid, but ultimately our opinion is the one that will get done. And I get bored from saying that the Premier League format has evolved constantly over the history of the Premier League, and it will evolve again. But for the time being, we're comfortable with how it is.
So 8 and the knockout format is here to stay.
It's going to be in place in 2024. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm sure that'll please.
Just giving you a headline.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll please.
It's always good when you do like a 20-minute interview or whatever, and you know as soon as you say the line that's going to end up in capital letters on the Twitter post.
I don't know. There's a few in here so far. So there may be like Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday slots for this one.
So I don't go on Twitter anymore anyway. Now it's called X. I can't find it in my apps.
Also, the World Series, we've got one event announced, which I'll touch on in a minute. I'm guessing, are we going to see Bahrain and maybe one other in January?
Yeah, Bahrain and one other in January. Three in the middle part of the year, around that June-July period, and then 2 in August, Australia and New Zealand.
Well, we don't know the dates for New York anyway because they're already out there. So, the Dutch one is an interesting one. Now, is this just a financial thing, and because surely the World Series was about growing the sport, and
it was, and it still is, and that's why we go to Bahrain and Poland and other countries like that, which we brought onto the circuit for the first time. But in the same vein, we've got strong commercial partners in the Netherlands, broadcasters, sponsors. We know there's a huge demand from fans. The standard of player from the Netherlands is obviously excellent. The opportunity presented itself to do an event there, and what are we supposed to say? Like, oh no, we won't do the event because there's already loads of good Dutch dart players. That would not be right. I think it would be a competitive event in terms of. I know that the 8 invites won't be too keen on playing any of the 8 Dutch players because any of the top 8 Dutch players can win a best of 11 match against one of the top guys in the world. So that'll be a very competitive weekend. It's not a huge distance for anybody to travel. It made sense to bring the event back. We tried it a couple of years ago in the wrong venue. It was way too big. We don't want to take anything away from the Rotterdam Premier League or the World Series finals, which we've just had, which is always a tremendous atmosphere at AFAS Live. But we felt that there was scope, and the European Tour event, of course, in the Netherlands. But we felt there was scope for one more Dutch event.
The American doubleheader. Are we any close to extending in our period in America like we do in the Oceanic region?
Yeah, no, we're not, unfortunately. As I said, we would like to do something in Canada. It's not proving as easy as we'd have hoped it would have done for various reasons that I won't bore you with. But it's definitely on our to-do list. It's just unfortunately not the top line at the moment.
Yeah, no, I get that, and it's an interesting one.
That's another one where you'd have very strong local interest, good standard of local player. You know, there's no doubt a Canadian World Series event would be an asset to us. We're just not quite able to put it in place yet.
Yeah, going back to the women's series and Bo's decision, obviously has an impact on a lot of things.
Bo hasn't actually made a decision.
That's what I mean, but we're looking at it. I might be wrong with this, but because I think that's what I wanted to clarify with you. If Bo decides to pick Lakeside and not go to Alexandra Palace, does that then mean we'll only have 2 women at this year's World Championship because Bo's place then reverts to the PDPA qualifier? Is that correct?
Under the way the rules are written, that is correct, yeah.
Is there an amendment coming to that? Because obviously so much was made last year about having 3 women at the World Championship going forward, and to only have 2 the first year back surely is a backward step.
It's a good question. It's a difficult question. It's one we've been toying with because obviously we wanted to have 3 women in the women's world in the World Championship from the women's series and the women's world match play, but we have got a rule that's written in black and white that says what will happen. It wasn't a rule we ever thought would particularly need conversation because this isn't a scenario that was relevant at the time. You know, we meet with the PDPA and we discuss the rules. They're generally for the following year. We don't like to change rules retrospectively. Quite a lot of people on Twitter don't like it when we change rules retrospectively. You know, the rule it currently says what will happen. You know, and that's probably all I can say on it at the moment.
Off of that, what's the difference between the place from the Women's World Match Play and Jeff Smith's North American Championship reverting back to the CDC then?
So the Jeff Smith scenario is related to Jeff's status as a tour card holder. What we have to be conscious of is when players from territories where there are affiliate tours come and win a tour card, they can't continually, over a long period of time, and I'm not saying Jeff does this by the way, but some players have done in the past, is they use their affiliate tour as a backstop if they fail to qualify for the World Championship through the PDC route that they are entitled to because they've won a tour card. You can't always have a soft landing. So if you go home, if you fail to qualify for the World Championship and you go home and you win your affiliate tour qualification series or event, which often happens because you're obviously at a higher level than the domestic players because you qualified for the PDC tour, that stunts the conveyor belt and it gives you an unfair advantage. We've had players in the past who've defended their tour card by qualifying for the World Championship in their own country after having failed to qualify for the World Championship at a series of events they've played on all year. There has to be a point, and that's why it's staggered up from 2 years, 1 year, no years. You know, there has to be a point where you have to commit. You know, and it sounds like I'm talking about Jeff, and I'm not. It just so happens that he's the live example for this year. But the overall intention of that rule was to give players a number of years to integrate into fully being PDC players and not just needing that fallback position of going home to qualify when they've failed on the main tour. I mean, every player who'll be watching this from the home countries, from the UK, will be saying, that's right, because I haven't got a British qualifier to go home to or whatever like that. And every player will be watching this from another country where there's an affiliate tour and they're maybe the only tour card holder or one of only a handful will be saying, well, that's not fair because I'm from that country, so I should be allowed to play in my own country's qualifier. So it's never going to be one of those rules that's going to sit well with everybody, but we genuinely believe it's fairest, and also it's part of that evolution of you as a dart player to go from playing at home to playing on the main professional circuit.
Grand Slam of darts and the World Youth in particular, is it a bit weird now that we already know that who's going to be in the Grand Slam next year?
Maybe.
I know it's calendar specific or whatever, but obviously the 2 guys that have got there deserve their spot and fantastic. But in that timescale, so much can change.
It can. But you know, we want to give them a reward. And it just so happens that the way the calendar falls, the World Youth Championship final is, it's a week after the thing. I mean, you could say the same about Minehead in November, couldn't you? The runner-up from Minehead in November will know he's qualified for the Grand Slam 11 and a half months away. When you do something on a 12-month cycle, there's always going to be people who qualify early and people who qualify late.
the DRA finally released some case notes for us to all jump into, because some of them I actually enjoy reading it, and it's funny. Obviously the Challenge Tour one, the 4-year ban for the Bradley Phillips for the COVID issue. Does that send out a real statement of how
it did, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. You know, we've had a conversation with the DRA about the delay in releasing that information, which was an administrative oversight, but it shouldn't happen again in the future, because it's a bit weird how those sort of things caused headlines years after they happened, you know. But yeah, it sent out a strong message that you can't mess about, especially with, you know, I mean, it's strange we're actually talking about COVID, but with something as strong as that, you know, you're putting other players' health at risk. So it was absolutely the right decision they came to.
Yeah, it was obviously it just popped out, so it was like,
it was a bit strange.
Which was obviously a huge ban, but it was breaking the law, whether people's thoughts on COVID were or whatever. At the time, it was against.
It was,
The game, the sport in general, it seems in a really, really good place right now, but at the very elite, are we seeing a bit of a dip at the moment, where if you go back 4 or 5 years, perhaps the standard was a little bit higher than what it is?
Maybe, but I think that's caused by how competitive it is.
Yeah.
You know, I think you're seeing a lot. We're not going into tournaments knowing who's going to win. We're not really going into tournaments knowing who's going to make the semi-finals even. You know, so I think it's very difficult to ask these elite players. I'd rather see somebody throw a 97 average every week than throw 107 one week and 91 the next week. You know, I think they're maintaining a higher. If you look at the, and someone will probably correct me on this, but if you look at the averages, I think they're probably maintaining a higher level than, even if they're not peaking. And the peaks will start to come, don't forget, because the players ramp up towards the end of the year with the Grand Slam, the Players, the World Championship, the Grand Prix, etc., Euros. So you'll start to see the cream will rise to the top, and someone will come through the pack as always, and someone will struggle and drop away. But I think week in, week out, the standard that they're delivering, under the pressure they're delivering, under the pressure that they're having to deliver it under, is phenomenal.
Just picking this back up because we run out of time before the conspiracy theory starts saying we've edited it.
No editing, one take. I'm called One Take Porter, by the way.
The World Grand Prix for next year, we've got TBC on the. I know everyone, all the Irish people keep asking. Are you still looking for venues in Ireland, or is that avenue run out now?
No, that avenue hasn't run out. But in the same vein, Leicester's a good venue for us. We just haven't either got a contract in place with Leicester or found an alternative in Ireland or whatever. So you know, that's still a TBC. Whether it's the Grand Prix or something else, we do want to go back to Ireland. Just I've said this before. Somebody just go and build an arena.
Just everyone gets their hopes up when it just says TBC. What's going on with it and everything like that. Aldersley, obviously the new home for the Slam. That's the Civic.
It's working well. And they're going to. You know, we're talking to Wolverhampton Council. They're investing in the Aldersley, going to improve the infrastructure of the venue. You know, so I think kind of it's just fallen into place really there.
Some exciting new venues on the Euro Tour as well. Switzerland for the first time must be an exciting prospect to go into there.
It's always good to go to a new country for the first time. You know, we'd love to do Spain. We'd like to look at Sweden. You know, other places. You know, Hungary and the Czech Republic work great for us. Poland works great for a World Series event. Would also work well for a Euro Tour. You know. We'd want to do everything everywhere, but you have to make decisions, you know.
On these venues and Premier Leagues, like I get it's difficult to go somewhere for one night, but are we close to getting another European city onto the Premier League?
I think if we were to make any changes for the Premier League, it would be to drop an English venue and pick something out somewhere else in continental Europe.
Well, I just look at it from a geographical point of view. You've got a lot all clustered together. I know they're all big cities and everything like that, but sometimes it's like they all feel a little bit the same.
Yeah, I mean they do if you go. It's like with the format question. They may do if you watch every week or you go every week, but when you only go once, it doesn't feel the same.
I look at it from my point of view because I go to every one.
That's the thing. It's only the same if you see it all the time. You know, if you go to you're a Spurs fan, if you go to Spurs every week, you feel like you're at the same match every week. You know, and then if you only went once a season, you'd be more excited.
I did under Mourinho and Conte. It was the same. It was like,
Did you stay to the end last week?
Last one for me. World Championships, obviously, Paddy Power, exciting times to go. That their social's going to be absolute carnage, which we know it's already started. How excited are we? And ticket-wise, I see. I don't think they even went on general sale, did they? Tickets,
we got
very little.
About 200 tickets went on general sale. I think it was about that many. Yeah.
I know that you always had this has to be sustained. If the same happens next year, are questions then going to be asked about increasing the capacity at Alexandra Palace?
Maybe, but increasing the capacity can come in a variety of different ways, you know. So I've given you a lot today, and I'm not going to tell you any more than that.
just poking them. Again, on that, obviously, Kazoo. Are we still going to see them as sponsors?
We've still got Kazoo as partners. There was some very irresponsible comments made by people in positions
I saw you bite back
at
a couple of established
just
as well.
Really poor, you know, from people who are supposed to be professionals and should know better than just to spout off nonsense opinions without asking questions first. Kazoo are a strong partner of ours across multiple events, and that applies across the Matchroom Group, not just PDC. They've exited this agreement, but they're still going to be the partners of at least 3 other events going forward. So, you know, Paddy Power, though, we're very excited to be working with them. I think they'll bring a different dimension to it. I've seen their ideas for the Fans Village. They're incredible. They're just going to engage with people. They're a fun brand. Whether you like betting or not, you can have fun with Paddy Power. So, you know, I think that's going to be good.
Matt, absolute pleasure, and thanks for taking time out of your schedule for me to come and do this. Thanks very much.
Mate. Cheers.